Live from Bryant-Denny Stadium with special guests, feature stories, and a comprehensive look at Alabama's upcoming game. This is Crimson Tide Kickoff on WVUA 23.
And good morning, everybody. Happy game day. I'm Gary Harris, and you're watching Crimson Tide Kickoff. We're going to get you ready from Alabama and Mississippi State tonight over in Starkville. And let's get started as we always do. Let's go with our Bama headlines.
For the latest on the Crimson Tide, you don't need the newspaper. You need Bama Headlines.
Well, Alabama, despite the loss last week at Texas A&M, still controls its own destiny. So now it's all about getting back to work, getting past that setback last week, and getting back on track. You certainly don't want to lose for a second consecutive week. Tonight in Starkville, we'll see how the Tide responds against the Mississippi State Bulldogs. And we'll hear from some players about the Tide's mindset heading into this big game tonight at Davis-Wade Stadium in just a little bit. Well, Mississippi State's cowbell clank should be in rare form for the Bulldogs showdown with Alabama. Tonight's game will be the first night game against an SEC opponent at Scott Field at Davis-Wade Stadium since 2019. Mississippi State Stadium holds 61,000 people, but with the majority clanging those cowbells, it gets loud. I mean, it gets really loud, and it gets hard to hear. I've been there many times. I'll be there tonight, and boy, when they get those cowboy bells clanking, you can't hardly hear a thing. So the best thing to do is to jump on them, get on top of them so they don't have any reason to ring the cowbells. Well, Alabama Volleyball picks up its first SEC win. Women's soccer looks for its first road win. And when Alabama men's basketball tips off the season, it will be for a good cause. We'll explain coming up. Plus, interviews with Alabama women's basketball coach Kristy Curry. Former Crimson Tide quarterback Alan Gray shares memories of a couple of the biggest moments in the series history between Alabama and Mississippi State, 1980 and 1981. And we'll talk with Paul Jones of Bulldogs 24/7 for some opponent intel in our Behind Enemy Lines segment. Well, this was the scene yesterday afternoon outside the Malmore Athletic Complex. Alabama loading up for the short 85-mile bus trip to Starkville on Highway 82. No need to fly when you're only about an hour and 25 minutes away. You saw Will Anderson, there's Christian Harris, Pete Golding, the defensive coordinator. Boy, he's feeling the heat from the fans, but I guarantee he's focused on his job. Bryce Young, the outstanding sophomore quarterback for the Crimson Tide, he's been great. Did have a couple of mistakes, though, against A&M that I'm sure he has worked hard to correct this week. And the man right there, Nick Saban, when he gets on the bus, you better be in your seat because they're going to close those doors and take off. As I said, they left about 4:15 yesterday afternoon, got into Starkville about 5:45, and, of course, waiting now to play the game. Well, for the last 11 months, Alabama has been the undisputed king, the #1 team in the college football top 25. But after that upset loss at Texas A&M, Bama dropped down to #5. Now, it may have other teams believing they can challenge the Tide, seeing what A&M did. Alabama has had a chance to deal with the recent loss, and they hope to perform back to the Alabama standard tonight and go head-to-head with any team that stands in their way. And, of course, lay any other team's lingering thoughts about beating them to rest, especially the Mississippi State Bulldogs.
Now we have a point to prove because, you know, everybody wants to beat us and everybody probably feel like they can beat us now because of what we put on film and, you know, how we played.
Well, if we relax against the University of Alabama, then we are the stupidest team in college football.
Mike Leach does not sugarcoat it, does he? And he's right. If you ever feel like you don't need to be at your best to play Alabama, there's something wrong with you. And I promise you, Mississippi State will be up and they will be ready to go. The question is, will they be good enough to beat Alabama tonight? Only time will tell. Well, we know this much. The air raid offense is something different. Mississippi State likes to throw the rock around, and this year they're throwing it around nearly 80% of the time. I mean, last year it wasn't really the air raid, all that was going on with COVID and that season, but they're getting it done now. Over the last 3 games, they've averaged right at 400 yards a game passing. Will Reichard has thrown for 3 touchdowns in each of the last 3 games. He's got over 1,800 yards, 14 touchdowns, and just 2 picks. They're throwing it about 60 times a game. And against Memphis, he threw it 67 times, against LSU 62 times, and against A&M 59 times. With so many attempts, you would think there's a lot of risk, but he has only been picked off, as I said, once during that 3-game stretch, and just twice through 5 games this season, so he's taking care of the ball. Alabama head coach Nick Saban says when you're facing a team that throws it this much, you got to change the way you think.
You know, the old-fashioned, got to stop the run on regular downs and, you know, play the passes. You know, you got to kind of change to, yeah, we got to stop the runs, but, you know, we got to play really good pass defense on every down, because a lot of their passes are control game, get the ball out quick, short, you know, gain 5, 7 catch and runs. So you got to break on the ball and tackle well. And it's a little different mindset that your team has to have.
That's for sure. On the other side of the ball, Mississippi State linebacker Nathaniel Watson likes to play as fast as the Bulldogs offense. Number 24, who is a native of Maplesville, Alabama, has 26 tackles and 2 tackles for loss this season, and he's registered a tackle for loss or partial tackle for loss in 3 straight games. And this defense is talented and athletic. They're just not very deep, led by number 24. Well, after taking a loss against A&M last week, a lot of these streaks that we've been talking about are done, over, out. The 100-game winning streak against unranked teams, going back to Louisiana at Monroe in 2007, that snapped. A&M was unranked last week. Nick Saban was undefeated against his former assistants, 24-0. Jimbo Fisher beat him, now 24-1. It broke a 24-1. It broke a 680-day winning streak, with the last loss being in the Iron Bowl at Auburn in 2019, and a 19-game winning streak came to an end as well. Well, Alabama fans are used to this team continuing streaks and breaking records, but they never thought that they would see this many streaks come to an end last week in College Station at Kyle Field, but they did. You give A&M credit, but as I said, you got to move on, get ready for tonight. Kickoff in Starkville is scheduled for just after 6 p.m. on ESPN. Also, you can listen to it on the Crimson Tide Sports Network with Eli Gold, John Parker Wilson, and the crew. And once again, this is the first home SEC game at Davis Wade Stadium since 2019. How will it feel among the cowbell clanking fans over there? CTKO's Brianna Duncan joins us now with the weather forecast, the game day forecast. Brianna, we know they're going to be loud with those cowbells, but will people have to bundle up over in Starkville tonight, including me?
You know what, Gary, now temperatures this morning were quite chilly, and temperatures now are still starting to warm up, but if you're in Starkville, if you're tailgating right now, temperatures will warm up slowly into the lower 70s for today. Now they will drop again this evening, and looking at radar right now, you can see partly cloudy conditions across central Alabama. We saw several clouds this morning as we woke up to a chilly morning today. Like I said earlier, if you are in Starkville, you will see that temperatures will warm up into the lower 60s, upper 70s by 3 p.m., dipping into the lower 60s by kickoff. Then once we get into those evening hours, temperatures into the lower 50s, and temperatures will continue to drop into the late hours and into the early morning, waking up to the mid 40s again tomorrow. Gary.
Thank you, Brianna. We'll check in with you again in a little bit. Well, coming up on CTKO, we'll hear more from Alabama defensive lineman DJ Dale on how he thinks the Crimson Tide will bounce back from that loss at A&M. Also, some questions are coming up this week about Alabama's play calling in the red zone. All those passes following that game at Texas A&M. More when we come back. And running back Brian Robinson will give us his take on the offensive line and how they're playing heading into the matchup in Starkville. Stick around. More CTKO right after this.
You're watching Crimson Tide Kickoff on WVUA 23.
He said it before it even happened that, we was going to get hit in the mouth if we, prepare the way we're preparing. So I feel like the way you approach the practice is everything. If you look at it like it's going to be bad, long, hot, then that's the way you're going to practice. I feel like, people's mindset wasn't there in the beginning of the week, and it showed on Saturday.
It sure did. Welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Gary Harris. For the past week, Alabama coaches, I do a sports talk show on Tide 100.9 FM, other shows here at the TV station. I've been getting phone calls about play calling and the decisions that were made in the red zone against Texas A&M. A turnover on the 2-yard line and 2 short field goals in that red zone. Had that gone the other way, Alabama would have won the game easily. And with a chance for Bill O'Brien to use running back Brian Robinson Jr., who was having a terrific game, he didn't do that very much. You see the throws there. And one time on 1st and goal from the 3 or 4, they threw it 3 straight times when it looked like they could have run the ball in. Fans certainly questioning the decisions made by the offensive coaching staff.
I feel like the offensive line is confident in, their ability, to get some push up front, and I'm confident that I can pick up, the hard yards, if it's 1-2 yards or, however many yards it is, I feel like we're confident enough that we can pick them up.
And Alabama fans will certainly be looking for ground and pound tonight in the red zone. You can bet on that. Well, when we come back, WVUA 23's Matthew Travis will go behind enemy lines and talk to Bulldogs 24/7 publisher Paul Jones to get a better idea of what we can expect to see from Mississippi State tonight. Also, the success at the kicking position for Alabama football is not going unnoticed. Will Reichard's done a heck of a job. And Cooper Husky will give credit where credit is due when we come back. Don't go anywhere. CTKO will return. Welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff inside our Bryant Denny WVUA 23 studios. I'm Gary Harris. One of our most popular segments is Behind Enemy Lines. I like it, and I know you do too, because you get to kind of hear from the other side. And this week's game is interesting because, of course, last week Alabama lost at Texas A&M, and now they're going to try to rebound against Mississippi State, a team that beat A&M the week before. So the Bulldogs feeling pretty confident, I bet, that they can knock off the Crimson Tide as well. CTKO's Matthew Travis joins us now live, and earlier this week he went behind enemy lines when he spoke with Paul Jones of Bulldogs 24/7. Matthew?
Hey Gary, Alabama is coming off a loss to an unranked opponent for the first time since 2007, which shows the other teams on Alabama's schedule this year that it's possible to beat Alabama. But when I spoke to Paul Jones of 24/7 Sports earlier this week, he told me Mississippi State can't get too caught up in that.
To kind of sum up Mike Leach, what he said Monday, Mississippi State would be the dumbest team in America to overlook Alabama just because they're coming off a loss. I mean, you're talking about a team that Mississippi State has not beat since 2007.
One thing almost everyone I've spoke with this season has told me is that you need to limit your mistakes when you play Alabama. And according to Jones, the same is true for Mississippi State.
Well, I mean, to not sound simplistic, play clean football. I mean, their best two games this year were against North Carolina State and Texas A&M, and no coincidence they played clean football. They didn't turn the football over. They didn't shoot themselves in the foot, and that'll be more important than ever this weekend because, I think last week was a weird deal for Alabama, but more times than not, they're not going to hurt themselves. And when you do make mistakes against Alabama, they're going to make you pay for it.
Many expect Alabama to come out on fire in tonight's game, playing with something to prove. And Jones said for Mississippi State to handle that, they need to not get overwhelmed.
They just have to keep their composure and stay within themselves. And, this air raid offense, it takes accuracy. It takes playing clean football because it's not an offense that's going to take deep shots all the time, and they rarely take deep shots. So you're talking 11, 12 plays down the field, completing 5-6 yard passes. You've got to be clean there, and you've got to be patient, and you got to be consistent with it. But to me, the biggest key, Matthew, is overcoming any of that early adversity they may get with Alabama in the first quarter.
Jones also told me that this is going to be a special game for Mississippi State's Scott Lashley, who transferred from Alabama before last season, and that today he will be playing with something to prove. Reporting for CTKO, I'm Matthew Travis.
Thank you, Matthew. I remember Scott Lashley well when he came out of West Point, Mississippi High School. He committed and signed with Alabama. Big, strong, physical offensive tackle. It just didn't happen for him here, but I tell you this, I'm glad he's getting to play at Mississippi State. He's an outstanding young man. And as you said, tonight he'll be looking to get something done against his former team. All right, Will Reichard was perfect on field goals and extra points last season. And so far this year, he's only missed one field goal. He's been really good. CTKO's Cooper Husky gives us a better appreciation for how well Will Reichard has done and the hot streak that he's been on.
Since the start of last season, Will Reichard has only missed one field goal and is perfect on extra point kicks. Before starting this incredible run, Reichard honed his skills with one-on-one kicking, where he met his coach and longtime friend, Brian Egan.
So yeah, me and Will have had a great relationship pretty much. It goes back to I was probably 15 or 16 years old, maybe 17. He was a 7, 8-year-old young boy, so known him a long time. He's a great young man.
Egan says the hot streak is the result of countless hours Reichard put in before ever donning the crimson and white of Alabama.
It just all comes back to just the way he trains and the way he does everything. He handles everything like a professional, and ever since Will was young, he was always want to be good. And, he was always working. He used to send me videos. He'd be in his garage. They had turf laid out in the garage. He'd be doing his drill work, his muscle memory stuff. So all that leads up into this point. And now y'all are really just getting the fruits of his labor, because all this is years and years of work that he's put in to get to himself at this point.
Former Alabama kicker Brian Cunningham says he is really impressed with what Reichard has accomplished with the Crimson Tide.
Well, first, I'm jealous in a good way, because I think to myself, wow, if I could have had those stats. But I'm really happy for him. That is a very difficult thing to accomplish, and I'm very proud of Will. I don't know him personally, but just being part of the Alabama family, obviously very, very happy for him and all the success that he's had.
With 3 made field goals last week at Texas A&M, Will Reichard is now 23 for 24 over the last 2 seasons. He looks to continue that streak of excellence tonight at Mississippi State. For CTKO, I'm Cooper Husky.
Thanks, Coop. Last night, Alabama soccer had a better outcome in College Station than the football team did last week. The Tide soccer team battled to a 1-1 draw against the Aggies. Alabama trailed 1-0 in the 55th minute of the match until Felicia Knox delivered a corner kick and set up Katie Henderson for a header. Boy, Henderson's been really strong this year. And that was the equalizer. It was her 5th goal of the season. They went into a couple of overtimes, but neither team could get a goal, so Alabama gets the draw, and they get a point. And they're still looking for their first road win of the season. Alabama will be at home this Thursday against Kentucky. That match is scheduled for 7 p.m. And the Crimson Tide seniors will be honored in a pregame ceremony. Well, coming up on CTKO, WVUA 23 and Crimson Tide Kickoff's Tatum Vaught got to talk with Alabama women's basketball head coach Kristy Curry this week. Tide's coming off an NCAA tournament appearance. We'll hear more about the Tide tip-off event and how Coach Curry's team has grown from last season. Also, CTKO's Dylan Morgan will tell us about a Crimson Tide basketball game that will benefit a charity. Keep it tuned right here at CTKO. Let's check in on Bama Volleyball. The Tide breaking through this week for its first SEC win of the season, a 5-set road victory in Columbia over Missouri. Alabama fell in the first set, but a block from middle blocker Chase Campbell for the second set put it away 25-21. Here's outside hitter Sammy Jacobs keeping the momentum with a service ace and securing the third set, putting Bama up in the match 2-1. An attack error from the Tigers secured the match point and sent Alabama home with its first SEC win of the season. The Crimson Tide will host mighty Florida this coming Wednesday at Foster Auditorium. Good win there for the Tide. And welcome back into Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Gary Harris. Alabama basketball is ready to tip off the season. It'll happen this Friday with the Tide tip-off event at Foster Auditorium. Fans will get their first live look at both the Bama men's and women's basketball teams, and both programs are coming off trips to the NCAA tournament. CTKO's Tatum Vaught had a chance to speak with Alabama women's head coach Kristy Curry to preview the tip-off event and the upcoming season.
Thanks, Gary. I'm joined by Alabama women's basketball head coach Kristy Curry. Coach, Tide Tip-Off is officially back. Can you tell me how excited you are for this event to be returning?
Yeah, we're really excited. I know it's a joy as a coach to watch your players have fun with this type of event, and to be combining with the men and Coach Nate and his guys. It's something we always look forward to.
And the tip-off we know isn't an official game, but can you talk about the emotions that you're having about getting fans back in the stands at Foster?
Yeah, it's always good to, when you've been in practice, then sometimes it gets a little quiet beyond the music that we play. And, with the COVID restrictions, it's just great to see people in the stands. I know that as we move forward, just the fan engagement is something our players and our staff, we're all looking forward to being more like normal in the past. And Tide Tip-Off is just a great opportunity for us to have, actual fans in the stands, and we're excited.
And then switching over to your team itself, we're so excited to watch them. So what are some main factors on both sides of the ball that your team struggled with last year that you've really worked on this offseason to better prepare?
Well, we came off a great season last year to get to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 22 years. I'll be honest, there were so many positives. It's hard for me to focus on, anything that, that was negative. I think from a standpoint of this is a different team, and, we're excited about the pieces. We love our depth at the post spot, at the 5 spot. We'll be more agile. We'll be able to run the floor, more athletic. And then, I think the forward spot will have to be, when you lose a Jasmine Walker, you have to replace that by committee. I don't think one single person can just replace Jazz. And then when you look at our 3 spot with Brittany Davis returning, who wasn't able to play last year, that's something that just completely gives us a totally different dimension than we had a year ago from scoring the basketball. And then you add the backcourt with Megan Abrams and Hannah Barber, and then, you have a Myra Gordon who is much improved, and an Allie Craig Cruz, and, you add a transfer in Jemiah Mingo Young. So I'm excited about this group. I like our depth. We're deeper. We're going to have to replace some points per game by committee, and I'm just excited about what this group brings every day with their energy, their work ethic.
Definitely, and you already kind of touched on your players at their specific positions, but which players have stepped up as essential leaders going into this season?
I definitely think, leaders are important, but I also think it's the followers. You can lead, but you've got to have great followers, and I think it's a combination. When you look at our leaders, I would say right now, because of the summer, and because of the experience returning, it's an automatic Hannah Barber and it's an automatic Megan Abrams. And, as a coach, they're an extension of our staff on the floor. I mean, when you can have your quarterback be your hardest worker and your most vocal and most energetic leaders, those two are for us. And, they bring a lot of experience. Megan's already committed to return next season along with Hannah. So, it's exciting the next 2 years because we have some experienced leaders in our program who work extremely hard. And we just need everybody to follow those two. And I'm excited about those two being our core leaders.
Great. Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're all super excited to see what your team brings to the court this season.
Thanks so much for having us on, Tatum. Have a great week and roll Tide.
You too, Coach. Tide Tip-Off will officially begin October 22nd at 7:30 p.m. in Foster Auditorium. Seating is first come, first serve, so get there early if you want to get a preseason look at both teams. Reporting for CTKO, I'm Tatum Vaught. Back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Tatum, and thank you, Coach. Well, just last week, Alabama men's basketball announced a charity exhibition game against Louisiana Lafayette at Coleman Coliseum, with the proceeds benefiting the United Way of West Alabama. How cool is that? West Alabama continuing, or the United Way in Alabama basketball continuing to help the community following the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's CTKO reporter Dylan Morgan with more.
This year's United Way of West Alabama's 75th anniversary, and so we set a lofty goal of $4,175,000. Last year, we raised a little over $4 million during the pandemic, but before our campaign started, we raised more than $400,000 that went directly to individuals and frontline agencies who were dealing with the pandemic. 98% of the individuals who asked for support last year had never asked for United Way support.
Now Alabama basketball is looking to add to this year's support for United Way when they host the Raging Cajuns, with all proceeds going to the local organization, who are definitely excited to collaborate with Coach Oates and his team.
We were so excited here at the United Way of West Alabama to learn of Coach Oates and his team honoring us by having a charity game, the very first game of this exciting basketball season for the men's team, on Sunday, October 24th at 2 p.m. This is not part of the regular basketball package, and so individuals, when they purchase the ticket, it will benefit United Way of West Alabama. As a past president of the Tuscaloosa Tip-Off Club, this brings my two loves together, United Way of West Alabama and Alabama basketball, in a great way and a fun way to support the community and our favorite team.
This will be the second time now Coach Oates and his team will be having a charity game to kick off the season, the first since 2019 against Georgia Tech, and although he may not be able to show his excitement as he focuses on the upcoming season, these types of events are extremely important to Oates and the team.
Saw the charity exhibition got released today. We're looking forward to that. We've got a close scrimmage in that charity exhibition both before we open against Louisiana Tech. So we're looking forward to the year. I think we got a chance to be good.
Be sure to go online and get your tickets on rolltide.com/tickets to come and pack the house here at Coleman Coliseum in support of Alabama basketball and the United Way of West Alabama on Sunday, October 24th at 2 p.m. Central Time. Reporting for CTKO, I'm Dylan Morgan.
Thank you, Dylan. Alabama Rugby. That's right. Alabama Rugby is a club team set to take on Georgia this weekend at home. And this is a must-win game for the Crimson Tide if they want to reach the playoffs of the Southeastern Collegiate Rugby Conference, the SCRC. The game will be played on the Alabama recreational fields, which doubles as the rugby team's home pitch. Right now, the team is in third place in the division behind Kentucky and Clemson. I love these club teams, man. They're really playing just for the fun of the sport there with no scholarship support.
Guys make sacrifices throughout their whole week just because they want to be a part of this brotherhood and they want the opportunity to compete. And it's something beautiful. A lot of these guys, you know, they're not involved in as many extracurriculars as maybe a normal student. Rugby is really kind of what they love doing, and that's why they make these sacrifices. We had our fitness test to start practice. We had a run yesterday. We're not doing things that I think the ordinary college student would think is the most enjoyable. But it all ties back to the brotherhood and the opportunity to be competitive and have fun with your friends.
Tough guys, man. That is a physical sport. Well, when we come back here on CTKO, earlier this week, I talked with former Alabama quarterback Alan Gray, and we revisited two of the most memorable matchups between Alabama and Mississippi State in the history of the series, and they came in back-to-back years. And later, we'll go around the SEC to get the scoop on the Southeastern Conference, including a top 15 matchup in Athens as the #1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs take on number 11 Kentucky for supremacy in the East Division. Stick around. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Gary Harris here in our WVUA 23 studios inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. And Alabama takes on Mississippi State tonight over at Scott Field at Davis-Wade Stadium. You know, through the years, Alabama has dominated the series against Mississippi State. The Bulldogs' wins have been few and far between, but their most memorable win to this day remains 1980. Mississippi State 6, Alabama 3. At Mississippi Veterans Memorial Stadium in Jackson, Mississippi. Alabama was on a 28-game winning streak, back-to-back national champions, looking for a third straight national championship, and got derailed by John Bond, a freshman quarterback in a very good Mississippi State team coached by Emery Billard. Joining me to talk about that game and the 1981 game is Alan Gray, former Crimson Tide quarterback. Good morning, Alan. How are you?
I'm great, Gary. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. I said quite a bit about that game, but you were there. You didn't start. Don Jacobs was the starter, but you played in that game in 1980. Tell me, in addition to obviously losing the game, what do you remember most about that afternoon in Jackson, Mississippi, Alabama? #1, going for a third straight national championship, 28-game winning streak, snapped that day by the Bulldogs.
Well, a couple things. First, at halftime, we went in at halftime. And Coach Bryant came in, and it wasn't a bunch of hurrah, hurrah. I mean, we weren't playing great, and they were playing really well. And he just looked at us and he said, guys, he said, they've been asleep over here for 20 years. Don't wake them up. I don't know that we knew what he meant, but the headlines the next day was Mississippi State breaks 20-year losing streak. And so Coach Bryant knew history, and we played the game. Before the game, a little tidbit, before every game, the officials would come into our locker room, and Coach Bryant would call. He'd say, okay, I need my quarterback. So all the quarterbacks would come up, and the head official would go over some rules with us. Well, in this particular game, the head official, he looked at Coach Bryant, he looked at Don and I, and he said, now look, they bring some cowbells in at times, and he said, sometimes they get kind of loud. If you get up to the line of scrimmage and you can't hear, he said, I want you to look, you just turn around, you look at me. You put your hands up by your helmet just like this. And he said, I'll come in and stop it. And if I think that you can hear, I'm going to shoot you with the pistol, from the hip. I'll never forget. We fumbled on the goal line with time running out. Don on the goal line, it was as loud as it could be. He kept turning around, putting his hands up to his helmet gear, and the official just kept shooting him and shooting him and shooting him, and well, it's history now.
So the official did not keep his word based on what he told you pregame.
Well, it was it was at state, and it was at the end of the game, and I didn't expect him to stop the game, but it was loud, and obviously, it didn't work out. Snap, we had a fumble, they recovered, game was over. But it's just kind of comical because over 4 years, I had those meetings with Coach Bryant and the officials before every game, and that's every time the guy said that, and Coach Bryant, man, we're over there on the sideline. We can't hear it. We keep seeing Don throw his, he's turning around, Major's turning around, looking at the official, and no stoppage.
That's the first time I've ever heard that story. If Alabama scores a touchdown there, they win the game, and if you don't fumble, that winning streak continues, but it happens.
Well, I think 30 minutes after that in that end zone, I don't believe that goalpost was standing. I think they probably carried it down the streets of Starkville.
Do you know there's a story that Coach Bryant went into the Mississippi State locker room and congratulated their football team after that game? Do you know if that actually happened?
I believe he did. He was such a class guy. And he did that on occasions throughout his tenure at the university, and I was told the same thing. So I did not know it at the time, but I believe that he went over and knocked on the door and went in and congratulated.
That's class. All right, the next year, they've got a really good football team again, and that was a really good football team that they had in 1980. They're strong again. John Bond now is a sophomore at quarterback. You host them at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. You're the starting quarterback now. And once again, it goes right down to the wire. This time, it was the Alabama defense that made a play to preserve the win. Up 13-10, ball gets tipped. Tommy Wilcox comes up with it deep in Alabama territory, and you lead your team to a win over Mississippi State to get a little payback. What do you remember about that game?
Well, I remember they were ranked number 7, and we were ranked number 8, and they came to Tuscaloosa, Bryant-Denny, and it was a tough game. I think we went in at halftime tied 10-10, and so it was a really tough ball game. We turned around, and towards the end of the game, they drove the length of the field, and I want to say got all the way down maybe to our 12, 13-yard line, and with seconds remaining on the clock, Bond threw that pass, and Tommy tipped it and caught it, and sealed the victory. I believe one of the things that if you look back on the stats, there were either 12 or 13 fumbles in that game. Both teams ran the wishbone, but both teams' defenses were so physical that with pitching the ball and running the options, it was a very tight game, and I remember I started and we drove down, put some points on the board. Ken Coley played a great game. I think Ken Coley, who was the third quarterback to play in the game, he won the MVP because of his running and what he did in the second half.
Wow!
And so everybody, it was a team effort to win the ball game. But look, Mississippi State had a ball club. They were really good. And if you remember, Coach Arians now, Bruce Arians, who won the Super Bowl last year at Tampa Bay, Coach Bryant, we lost at 6-3. Bruce Arians was running back coach under Emory. Coach Bryant hired him.
He sure did.
So 1981, Bruce Arians on our staff. He's our running back coach. And so he gave Coach Bryant a lot of intelligence on Mississippi State's team, and he knew their personnel. And it was a pretty good team effort to beat that squad because John Bond and that group, they really, really were talented.
Well, Alan, we appreciate you going down memory lane, much like the teams you played on. These Alabama teams under Nick Saban don't lose very often either, but they'll be looking to bounce back tonight in Starkville against Mississippi State. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Gary. Roll Tide.
All right, Alan Gray with us. And Crimson Tide Kickoff will return right after this. Alabama men's golf in the Jerry Pate match play, SEC match play event at Shoal Creek. And what a way to cap off the event. Jones Free on Tuesday, the 18-year-old chipped in for Birdie to lift Alabama men's golf to win over Ole Miss. He's just a freshman. Alabama's 3-2 win was the Crimson Tide's third consecutive win in the event. They wound up going 3-1 in the match play event. So really good start to the fall season for Alabama men's golf. And welcome back to Crimson Tide Kickoff. I'm Gary Harris. CTKO's Stu McCann now joins us live in the studio to highlight some of the other storylines in the conference and take us around the SEC.
Gary, I don't even know when the last time we were live in the same places. This might be a first. First time ever. The words that will never be forgotten: get your popcorn ready. Of course, Lane Kiffin, pre-Alabama, pre a big loss. But he went on to say, he told his offensive coordinator, Kiffin says, we did not have it plugged in. You better check the power outlets, because Tennessee, the opponent tonight in Knoxville, and has put up 28 points in the first quarter of the last 2 games. You're going to need all of those machines heating on all those different levels. How about the rematch from this Fog game, which ended so strangely last December? Florida in control, going to hold off a late rally from LSU until Marco Wilson throws a shoe straight out of Austin Powers, and it put LSU in a position. The rematch is tonight. Let's not throw any shoes. How about this unbeaten battle in the SEC East? 6-0 Georgia, 6-0 Kentucky in Athens. And of course, there's fun with signs, because game day is in Athens. Just some of the ones that are getting a lot of pub this morning on social media. UK fans asked where the RB position is on the basketball court, when they think they're a cat person, or when they are a cat person. And maybe my personal favorite, Mark Stoops, more like Mark Poops. And that is around the SEC. I had to leave it with that one last zinger. Mark Stoops maybe is going to make them eat their words tonight. I don't know. Gary, let's go back to you over at the CTKO desk.
Very interesting stuff there, Mr. McCann. Enjoyable. All right, coming up on CTKO, we know the challenges that Cowbells in Starkville pose for the football players, but what about the Alabama cheerleaders? WVOA 23's Mike Royer spoke with a couple of Crimson Tide cheerleaders this week to see what they have to do to combat the ringing of the cowbells. We'll have that coming up here next. Also, we'll hear from the Mississippi State Bulldogs ahead of the matchup with number 5 Alabama today, so don't go anywhere. The Mississippi State perspective coming up next on Crimson Tide Kickoff.
Welcome back into CTKO, everybody. My name is Mike Royer, and on this Saturday, we've got special guests here today. They need no introductions. Cheerleaders and Big Al, who is one of the most interesting guys, and I love him to death. Everybody does. Cheerleaders, introduce yourself. Tell us your name and where you're from. Would you do that?
I'm Brayden, and I'm from Georgia. I'm Morgan. I'm from Enterprise, Alabama, and I'm a senior. We're both seniors.
Both seniors, yes. And this will be your last year cheering.
Last year
That's got to be a little sad. I know it's hard work, but that's a little sad.
It's very bittersweet, yes.
Tell us about being a cheerleader. We see you just at games, and you cheer, and you've got a great seat in the house to watch the football game, but I don't think people always realize how much work it is. Both of you tell me. It's quite a demanding schedule for you.
Right, yes. So there is a lot that happens behind the scenes, and we practice 4 times a week. 4 times a week. Four times a week, and we have workouts 2 times a week in the morning, super early in the morning. And on top of that, there's always games, and it's not just football. There's volleyball, basketball, and a lot of appearances at different things around the community, any type of outreach. So we like to go, of course, not with COVID as much, but we like to go into different schools and do different activities like that. So it's a lot.
And Reagan, we want to remember too, you're also students.
We are also students.
You need to graduate. Your parents have said so, right?
That was the #1 rule. First thing we were told. But they make sure that we have study hall hours, and our coaches are really good about making sure we get that study time in where it's needed. So they're able to work with our schedules.
A word about Big Al. I think, and I said beforehand, he's the greatest mascot in America. There are some good ones out there, but we love him. He walks in the hallway here in our building, and old guys like me run out of our office to get a picture with Bill Al.
Everybody lights up. Yes,
well, he's just
lights up for
such a good guy, and just makes you happy to be energy around him. So we're so glad you're here, Al. Thank you. I know you're kind of camera shy, so thanks for being on with us today. He's such a bashful guy. There's little girls out here watching. Would you both give your best advice to students who are watching, young ladies that go, oh man, those are Alabama cheerleaders. I want to be just like them someday. You start, Reagan, and tell us what's your best advice.
Well, first we do have clinics. We have normally 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring. We have already had our fall clinic, but you can sign up through rolltide.com and then come to our clinics and you'll get to stunt. We tell you about our game day experience. You learn the fight song, which is obviously very traditional in what we do a lot at games. And yeah, so that's like the #1 thing, and you get to know the coaches and talk to us and one-on-one time with us.
You have to take care of yourself. You have to be in good shape. Do you recommend to a young lady that they get involved in tumbling, gymnastics, things like that at an early age as well?
Yes, that's definitely very helpful. So you learn a lot of body awareness, body control, and different skill elements like tumbling, and we also do stunts, so a lot of different components go into that. I actually didn't start cheerleading full-time. I was a gymnast for a lot of my life. So I want to tell anyone out there, if they're in something else and it's always been a passion of theirs, it's never too late to try. But it's definitely important to have like an athletic background.
Now later on today, I think tonight 6 or 6:30, you'll be on the sidelines at Mississippi State. That's a tough place anyway with all the cowbells that are illegal, by the way. They're not allowed to have them, but they'll have them, I promise you. They'll have them. What's it like on the road like that? Do you just do the best you can to keep your section of fans happy, or is it just a different challenge altogether?
I think the most important thing is like staying engaged in the game, and whenever we notice that the other crowd is getting loud, that we're able to try to redirect that focus back onto our fans that did like take the time and travel, so that we can get them pumped up and help our players as well.
Yeah, that's a great thing about Alabama is Tide travels, and there's always fans, and the pep band too. Anytime the opposing team like plays a song, they'll play a song, and then we'll try to get even louder, and it's always really fun. The atmosphere stays up the whole time.
As seniors, you've seen changes in our stadium right here. The atmosphere now, is it about as, now that the fans are back, is about as good as you've ever seen it?
It's almost better now. Like after having a year of just like a different atmosphere coming back to it, it still gives me chills every time.
Do you like the light show? Do you like
we love the lights are the best part. Night games are
the
amazing.
most fun. They're so
every time they come on, it just, I think everyone in Bryant-Denny just gets chills, and I think it helps us play better. Like it brightens the mood. It's so much fun. It feels like almost like a party, like in Bryant-Denny. It's crazy.
I know some of my questions are kind of goofball questions, but I've never been a cheerleader. You're facing the crowd most of the time. You don't get to see much of the, you hear them go crazy over a touchdown pass and you probably didn't see it.
I know, it's crazy. I feel like most of the time if the play is right in front of us, we'll kind of turn around and see as much as we can.
Sure.
But the football players are so much taller than us. We're like trying to like go around and look and dodge. Most of the time I'm watching the big screen, and when I hear the crowd start yelling, I'm like, that must mean something good happened. I can't see, but I'm going to rally.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know you guys are busy with classes, with school, with work. You both are hoping to graduate May, is that right?
December, actually.
You're both done in December?
Yes, we are.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
So I'm graduating with public relations, but I'm actually at the Nook Tuscaloosa, which is a hair salon, so I'm going to be an apprentice there, so I want to do cosmetology.
Good for you.
Yes,
that's a good field.
passion.
That's a good field. And you?
I'm graduating with a psychology degree, and then I'm planning on applying to grad school to be a board-certified behavior analyst.
Very good. I need that.
I'll come back. I'll come back.
My behavior has never been right, so I'm going to need some help. I may look you up. Al, this is one guest we can have on with me where I really don't feel like I have to hold my stomach. He looks great. He looks great. Thank you so much, Al, for being here. We love you. We appreciate the hard work you do for the university. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
CTKO will continue in just a moment, and we'll go back to Gary.
Thanks, Mike. Really fun stuff right there. What about Mississippi State? The Bulldogs are confident, right? Yeah, they beat A&M a couple weeks ago over at Kyle Field, and then Alabama lost there last week. So they're well rested coming off a bye. Mississippi State head coach Mike Leach believes they can be successful, and his players echo that, saying they're excited for the challenge.
Just building off that game and watching A&M and Bama last week and stuff like that, we obviously can have a good opportunity this week. Both teams are obviously real good. You never out-question Bama. You never can go against A&M. That was a real good game, hard-fought game, and we look forward to the challenge.
All right, we'll be back to wrap up CTKO right after this. Welcome back to CTKO. Well, Brianna, I walked out the door this morning, and it actually felt like fall. Absolutely, it was nice and cool.
Oh my gosh, yes. I had the same reaction. I walked out the door, saw the cloudy conditions, felt the cool weather, and I thought to myself, finally, it feels like October should feel. And if you're in Starkville, you're going to feel the same way. As we reach kickoff, temperature is going to be in the lower 60s and will cool off into the evening. Tomorrow morning will be even cooler. Temperature is expected to be in the mid to lower 40s across central Alabama, warming up into the lower 70s once again. Similar story on Sunday with beautiful sunny skies. Really off to a great start with some autumnal weather, Gary.
Thank you, Brianna. I'm loving it. All right, coming up tonight on the news at 10, we will have a recap from Starkville. I will be there live tonight to recap Alabama and Mississippi State. Matthew Travis will be here in the studio on the sports desk. So make sure and join us tonight for the news at 10. Of course, you have news and weather as well. Don't want to minimize that, but we will be live tonight at Davis Wade Stadium following the game with a live report on Alabama and Mississippi State. I want to thank all the good folks here that make CTKO a reality every week, and want you to enjoy all the games. It's a beautiful fall day. Enjoy it. We'll see you tonight at 10.